There's a certain romance to the gold standard. It feels solid, real. You take a piece of paper, your dollar or your pound, and you can walk into a bank and swap it for a lump of shiny metal. Simple, honest. It's the kind of thing your grandpa would approve of. It suggests a world where value is tangible, not just numbers on a screen invented by people with questionable haircuts. The whole system was meant to be an automatic, self-correcting machine for the global economy. A beautiful, elegant idea that promised stability and prevented governments from just printing money whenever they felt like it. The problem with beautiful, elegant ideas, especially in economics, is that they have to interact with humans. And humans have a spectacular talent for breaking elegant things. So, where did this grand system come from? A carefully planned economic summit? A council of the world's greatest financial minds? No, it was basically an accident, courtesy of Isaac Newton. Yes, that Isaac Newton. Apples, gravity, the usual. In 1717, when he wasn't busy revolutionizing physics, he was master of the Royal Mint in England. His job was to figure out the official exchange rate between silver and gold. He did the math, set the price, and got it slightly wrong. He overvalued gold relative to silver. Naturally, people started trading in all their cheaper silver for the overvalued gold. Silver coins vanished from England, shipped abroad where they were worth more, and gold flooded in. Without even trying, Newton had put Britain on a de facto gold standard. It wasn't genius economic policy, it was a clerical error that stuck. For about 150 years, Britain was the weirdo on a gold standard, while everyone else used silver or both. Then, around 1870, it became the hot new thing. The newly formed German Empire, flush with cash after winning the Franco-Prussian War, decided to copy the world's leading economic power, Britain. They used the massive indemnity payment from France, paid in gold, naturally, to switch to the gold standard in 1871. Suddenly, everyone had to have one. The US, France, Belgium, Switzerland, it was international peer pressure on a macroeconomic scale. It created a fixed network of exchange rates, which was fantastic for international trade. It promised a world without currency fluctuations, a global orchestra playing in perfect financial harmony. The conductor, of course, was a rock. The system had rules, known as the rules of the game. They were simple. If your country bought more than it sold, you had a trade deficit. Gold would flow out to pay for it. Less gold meant a smaller money supply, which meant deflation. Prices and wages would fall. This would make your exports super cheap, and voila, your trade would balance again. It's automatic. Except it wasn't. Major players like France and Belgium hated the part where gold flowing in was supposed to cause inflation. So they cheated. They engaged in sterilization, hoarding the incoming gold in their central bank vaults to prevent it from increasing the money supply. This broke the automatic balancing machine part of the automatic balancing machine. It was like a group project where half the team refuses to do their part of the work. This delicate, already cheated system stumbled along until 1914. Then World War I happened. It turns out you can't fund a global industrial slaughter by sticking to a fixed amount of metal in a vault. War is expensive, ridiculously expensive. Governments needed to print astronomical sums of money to pay for soldiers, guns, and a whole lot of barbed wire. Tying your currency to gold during that is like trying to run a marathon with your shoelaces tied together. So, one by one, every country involved simply hit pause. They suspended the gold standard, promising to come back to it later. This was the first major crack in the facade, the first clear proof that when things get truly serious, the golden rules get thrown out the window. After the war, everyone wanted to get back to the good old days of pre-1914 stability. This nostalgia was a terrible guide for economic policy. Britain, under then Chancellor of the Exchequer Winston Churchill, made a particularly catastrophic decision in 1925. They decided to return the pound to the gold standard at its pre-war value. This ignored the fact that Britain had printed a ton of money and its economy was much weaker. It instantly made the pound massively overvalued. British exports, especially coal, became too expensive to sell. The result was crippling deflation, mass unemployment, and the 1926 general strike. Churchill, a man not known for admitting mistakes, later called it the worst decision of his entire life. Think about that. Then came the Great Depression. The gold standard didn't cause the 1929 crash, but it was the mechanism that transmitted the crisis around the world and made it so much worse. It acted like a global deflationary death machine. As banks failed in the U.S., the Federal Reserve should have flooded the economy with money to stop the panic. But it couldn't. It had to worry about people trading their dollars for gold. Expanding the money supply would have threatened the peg. So, to defend the dollar's link to gold, the Fed actually raised interest rates in 1931, tightening the money supply when the economy was suffocating. Every other country on the gold standard was trapped in the same nightmare, forced to import America's deflation. They were all chained together, walking off an economic cliff. The escape route was simple but terrifying. Leave the gold standard. In 1931, with its gold reserves draining, Britain finally gave up and let the pound float. Its economy immediately started to recover. It was like a patient who had been suffocating was finally allowed to breathe. Dozens of other countries followed their lead. The data is shockingly clear. The sooner a country abandoned the gold standard, the sooner its economy began to heal. The U.S. under Franklin D. Roosevelt effectively left in 1933 by forbidding private gold ownership and devaluing the dollar. It was a messy, chaotic process called competitive devaluation, which sounds bad, but it was really just countries finally choosing to save their own economies instead of honoring a commitment to a shiny, inert metal. And then there was France. France was the system's high priest, the true believer. While the world burned, France stuck to the rules with grim determination. Even worse, throughout the late 20s and early 30s, France's policies caused it to accumulate a gigantic hoard of the world's gold. By 1932, France and the US held over 60% of the world's monetary gold. France just sat on it, sterilizing it, refusing to let it expand their money supply and help the global economy. They were the dragon sitting on a pile of treasure while the village outside starved. They held on until 1936, ensuring their own depression was deeper and longer than almost anyone else's. A perfect lesson in how being ideologically pure can be practically catastrophic. After 2 world wars and a global depression, you'd think the world would have learned its lesson about rigid gold-based systems. And you'd be sort of right. In 1944, at Bretton Woods, the Allies designed a new system. It was Gold Standard Light. Instead of every currency being tied to gold, every currency was tied to the US dollar. The US dollar, in turn, was tied to gold at a fixed rate of $35 an ounce. This put the US and its massive gold reserves at the center of the universe. It worked for a while. The post-war boom, the Trente Glorieuses, the German Wirtschaftswunder all happened under this system. But it had a fatal flaw, a ticking time bomb built right into its foundation. The flaw was a beautiful little paradox called the Triffin dilemma. It's a catch-22. For the world economy to grow, it needed more reserve currency, more US dollars to finance trade. To supply those dollars, the U.S. had to run a constant balance of payments deficit, sending more dollars abroad than it took in. Simple enough. But the more dollars that piled up in foreign banks, the more obvious it became that the U.S. didn't have enough gold to back them all at $35 an ounce. So the very thing the system needed to function, a flood of dollars, was the very thing that would eventually destroy everyone's confidence in it. The system was designed to become a victim of its own success. A truly magnificent piece of self-sabotaging architecture. By the late 1960s, countries like France started calling America's bluff, demanding gold for their dollars. The system was hemorrhaging gold. The breaking point came on August 15, 1971. President Richard Nixon went on television and announced he was unilaterally closing the gold window. He severed the final link between the dollar and gold. Foreign governments could no longer show up and ask for their metal. The gold standard, in all its forms, was dead. It wasn't a moment of failure, but a moment of pragmatism and escape. The gold standard was a set of rigid golden handcuffs that made every crisis worse. It promised stability, but delivered paralysis. So the next time you hear someone long for the good old days of the gold standard, remember what those days actually looked like: a series of entirely predictable, self-inflicted disasters, all driven by a misplaced faith in a shiny, primitive, and ultimately unworkable idea. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more historical insights. Thanks for watching, nerds.